Africa will continue to be the least developed continent in the world until it does these that I'm going to show you. And if you are a son of the African soil, if you are an African, and you care about the welfare of Africa, and you really want to see Africa being truly making good use of its natural resources, then you should watch this video to the end, because after going through some of the graphical representations, in fact, I wept. And this is not the first time. Anytime I go through this, it is always a very sad day for me, because it reminds me of the fortune we are sitting on, yet our people are wallowing in poverty. We are suffering. How can you have everything but you are the poorest? Let's look at what is happening. This is a bar chart showing the natural resources of the various continents. Africa, the natural resources, the value in trillions of US dollars is about 130 billion US dollars. The second one is Asia, which is about 90 trillion US dollars. The next one is Europe, which is about 30 trillion US dollars. North America has about 45 trillion. South America has about 65 trillion. And Oceania, that is Australia. Australia has about 30 trillion US dollars. That is natural resources. So when you come to natural resources, Africa is leading all. Africa is the richest continent in terms of natural resources. It's undoubtedly clear and no one can dispute that fact. In fact, we have over 100 and none of them is having 100. Okay, so we're undoubtedly the richest continent. Then you go to the second slide. When we go to population, Asia is the most populated continent with a population of about 4.8 billion people. Then the second is Africa with a population of about what? We are close to 1.5 billion people. The next one is Europe with a population of about 800 million people. North America with a population of about 600 million people. South America with a population of about they are about 400 million. Okay. For Australia or Oceania, their population is about 50 million people. That is a combination of Australia and New Zealand. Okay, something interesting. So here you see that Africa is second in terms of what? Numbers of people, population. Then you go to the next one. This is the GDP of the various continents. Okay. Now, when you go back to the population, Africa constitutes 16% of the global population. It is about natural resources. We contribute a majority. That's more than half. Then, if you come to for natural resources, we contribute about 35 to 40%, not more than half, about 35 to 40%. Then, when you come to contribution in GDP, look at the figures. This is the first one you see at the top. That is Asia. Their GDP is about what? 40 trillion US dollars. 40 trillion US dollars. The next one is North America. North America, their GDP in trillions of US dollars is 28 trillion. The next one is Europe, which is 25 trillion US dollars. This is Europe. This is Asia. This is North America. Then you come to Africa. Africa is the one that represents the yellow one. Look at our GDP. Our GDP is about 3 trillion. Look at the last one. The last one is Oceania. That is the same as what? Australia. They have a GDP of about 2.5 trillion. Just very close to 3 trillion. We are a whole continent of 54 countries and about 1.4 billion people. Australia has a population of about 40 million. We can divide them by about 32 times and counting. Yet, our GDP of all the 54 countries combined is just almost equivalent to only one country, which the population is not even up to Nigeria. Nigeria has over 200 million people. Australia has about 40 million. And our GDP of all these 54 countries together is just like one country called Australia. If you go further, you realize. So just look at the vast gap. Look at the difference. Look at a continent like North America, which our population is far more than them. Our resources is far more than them. Yet, in terms of GDP, the economic value, the economic output, we are far behind. Okay, we go further. Now, when you look at this graph, these are curves that are showing a share of the global GDP, the world's 6 largest economies. Then you have the US, which account for about 26%. You have the European Union, about 70%, which is made up of several countries. We have China, 16.9%, India, and all that. I have some interest, and I want to show you something. There's some interesting revelation here. When you look here, you see that China has grown so rapidly from 1980 to 2020. You see that China has grown so fast. Look at the way they grew up. Look at for the United States, since about 1780 to 1800, the United States has been the leading country. That's the country with the highest GDP, nominal GDP. And so they have been stable for some years. Europe is also where the modern industrialization started. So they have also been very far developed. From Europe, it went to North America. From North America, China also copied, and they implemented, and they have some very fast, rapid growth. So they are the latest among the fastest growing economies. China has grown so fast. If you look at where they were in around 1980, China and Africa was at the same place. If you go back to the previous slide, if you check here, in 1980, Africa and China were at the same place. And just about 40 years later, see where China is, or the Asian continent, and see where we are. What is the difference? What did they do that took them out of their suffering and brought them into economic prosperity? Because I'm constantly referencing China because Asian economic growth, rapid economic growth, has rapidly been driven by mainly China. There are other countries such as Singapore, Israel, and a host, Qatar and others. But mainly it's China. I will later tell you what they did and what Africa also needs to do in order to grow so rapidly like the way they've grown. Then, if you go further, all these have culminated in a lot of suffering for African countries. Now, if you look at, this is Steve Hanke's inflation dashboard. The country with the highest inflation in the world as of 2024 is Zimbabwe. Look at the inflation, 1,265%. The second is what? South Sudan with 367% per year. Third one is Sudan, 156%. Fourth one is Nigeria, 111%. Fifth one is Myanmar, that is 75%. And then, if you continue, the sixth one, after Myanmar is Venezuela, 44%. The next one is Ghana, about 40%. You see that most of them, the countries that dominate among those with the highest inflation, they are African countries. How can someone live in a country where the inflation per year is 1,265%? What that basically means is that in that particular country, if you were buying something for 100 cedis or $100, by the end of the year, it will be about $1,265. How or where on earth can you survive in such an economy? So, what does Africa needs to do in order to get out of this situation? It's not only Zimbabwe. If you look at most of the African countries, people are basically suffering. Even an inflation of 40%, the Ghanaian situation, which I am living in, I feel it a lot. Because if I was buying something, 100 cedis in the beginning of the year, and it is 140 cedis now, it's really a lot of help. because I can't just imagine which part of the world that you can get an increment of 40% in your income within 1 year. Another talking of those that are having over 1,000% inflation. So what does Africa needs to do? I have my proposed solutions that I'm going to make, that if these solutions are adopted, and it must be a concern for all of us, those of us who really want to see Africa changing, the number one thing that we need is what? Leadership change. Most of the African countries, we don't have proper leadership. We don't have proper structures. How can a leader go and negotiate, like the leadership of a country, like the government? How can they negotiate that we have mineral resources, a foreign investor is coming to exploit, and you agree that they should give 10% to your country and take 90%? This is one of the things that is not helping Africa. So we need what? Leadership changes. We need to get rid of what? Corruption. We need to get rid of what? Leaders who don't have vision. Leaders who don't care about what? The people. Leaders who don't have the people at heart. These are the reasons why Africa continues to be behind. If you look at the Democratic Republic of Congo, their natural resources, the value is more than the value of the US economy, the GDP of the US economy. Yet, that country is constantly among the 3 poorest countries on earth. Out of over 193 countries, it has always been among the 3 poorest countries. Meanwhile, they are the richest. In fact, that country is the richest in terms of natural resources on earth. The phones that we buy, the computers and all that, cobalt and nickel are mainly mined from that particular country. Yet they are the poorest. So we need leadership changes. We need proper leadership structures that will make it difficult for corrupt politicians to survive. That will make it difficult for the wrong leaders to be elected. So leadership change is one of it. And it is the citizens that must wake up to have a clarion call to say that we are tired of this hardship. We are tired of this suffering. We are tired of this insensitive leadership. They are the people that can change. If you are a citizen, whichever country you found yourself, you must wake up to make sure that your leaders, you hold them accountable for what they do for you. And you must see a difference. The second thing that Africa must do is we must produce more entrepreneurs than business people. If you look at all the countries that they have, all those countries that have grown so rapidly in their economy, one thing I've noticed about them is they have more export than import. In other words, they produce real entrepreneurs who discover solutions to their problem and manufacture things that export to other parts of the world. For example, this device I'm using, it is manufactured somewhere, but the one who manufactured it is an entrepreneur. The computer I'm using is an entrepreneur. The phone I'm using to record this is an entrepreneur who manufactured it. Almost everything I can see in this room is manufactured by an entrepreneur. Now, what is the difference between an entrepreneur and a business person? Let me make it clear for you to know. All entrepreneurs are business people because they discover a solution to a problem. They manufacture something. It could be a solution to a problem, a service, or a product. They manufacture something and they make a profit at the end of the day. On the other hand, business people, their main focus is profit. So basically, they buy something, they add some amount to it and sell it to you. And that is what we have in most of these countries with high inflation. Consider Ghana, consider Nigeria, consider countries like Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso. In fact, Burkina Faso may be better, but there are a lot of countries in Africa like Zimbabwe. All those countries that you see the inflation being over, you see the inflation above 5%, all those countries, they are countries where they import so much. Over 90% of the things they use in that country are imported. How can you survive if that is what is happening in your country? So we need more entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs should manufacture the things we need in that country. Not that there should be people who are importing everything. I'm not saying import is bad. Myself, I import things and sell at times. But I want to echo this to your hearing that if we as a country continue to import everything we need, our story will never change. The United States, they export more than what they import. China export more than what they import. And China today, as I speak to you, their inflation is 1% per year. The last time I checked, the inflation was 1% a year. And the interest rate for businesses is 1%. Some of them were even as low as 0.5% interest rate on loan. And I was telling myself, sometimes we used to motivate ourselves and say, oh, you can make it no matter the difficulty, you can still start your business, you can still succeed. But consider this. How can you make it in a country like Ghana, where the inflation is 40%, or let's say 20%, or sometimes it could get to 50-something%? Not just Ghana alone. I am giving several examples. Like Zimbabwe, where the inflation is over 1,000%. How will you be able to survive in such a business environment? Maybe, so those kind of countries like Zimbabwe, it probably means that when you buy something today, when you go there, you are going to see a different price change. Those countries, these are not helping us. It is not helping us because if my colleague in China can borrow a loan and he will pay an interest of 1% a year, and I will be paying an interest of 40% a year, how can we all be the same? In the US, most companies or most banks, when they are offering loans, it's around 5%, 6%. In Ghana, it's over 40%. In most other African countries, it's even higher than that. The story is very difficult. We need real entrepreneurs who will manufacture the things we need. If we manufacture and we reduce our import, we can stabilize our economy. These are things that must be taken proactive steps by the government and the leadership. I go to the next one. The next one is what? We must change our mindset. And when I talk about changing our mindset, we must have that appetite to use African products. Some of you, or some of us, there are certain things we manufacture in Africa. You can get it, but you prefer a European brand. You prefer something that is bought from what? China, something from Dubai. Meanwhile, that same thing is being manufactured in your own country. If you continue to do that, you will not help your local economy to grow. You will be helping others' economy. So you must change your mind. You must have that mindset to buy from an African person, so that that person who is going to collect that money and make that profit is going to employ your fellow African. And at the end of the day, we will be helping Africa to grow. I believe if we take time to follow these, it is going to help us. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are watching this on YouTube, and follow my Facebook page if you are also watching this on Facebook page. Like this video, subscribe, share it to bless the life of others. If many people watch this video and they make use of the information, we will be changing Africa, and by the end of the day, all of us, it will be better for all of us. Thank you for watching. Once again, remember to leave your comments in the comment section, and see you in the next video. Bye.